Imagine an empire twice as enduring as the Roman Empire, spanning 3 continents and conquering territories that forever altering the course of world history. This is the Ottoman Empire, whose true story surpasses any legend in its wonder. We shall unveil the complete epic of its 623-year reign, from humble tribal origins to the dominion of vast realms. Prepare to embark upon this astonishing historical odyssey. The Ottoman tale began with the Kayai tribe, part of the Arghouzi Turks. These nomadic peoples hailed from the vast steppes of Central Asia, and were renowned for their fierce warrior spirit. In the 13th century, as the Mongol hordes swept across Asia, the Kayai tribe, along with many others, were forced from their homeland. Led by a Tug or Ul Gotsi, the Kays migrated to Anatolia, settling near the town of Sogat. This frontier region of the Byzantine Empire would become the cradle of Ottoman power. At that time, the dominant force in Anatolia was the Seljuk Empire. The Kayai tribe initially pledged allegiance to these Turkic rulers, yet the political landscape of Anatolia was undergoing rapid transformation. In 1243, the Seljuks suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the Mongol forces in the Battle of Kozd Ag. This battle signaled the decline of Seljuk influence in the region, creating space for the rise of smaller Turkic principalities. It was at this juncture that Osman I, son of a Tug or Ul, began to emerge. Around 1280, Osman led the Kayai tribe, demonstrating exceptional courage and skill as a leader. As Seljuk power waned, Osman began expanding his territory, advancing into Byzantine lands. His military victories attracted numerous followers. The cornerstone of Osman's early success lay in the concept of the mujahid, the warrior fighting for Islam. This ideology resonated profoundly along Anatolia's frontiers, enabling Osman to recruit warriors from neighboring tribes and even Christian territories. Warriors seeking glory and conquest continually joined his rank, swelling his forces. The legend of Osman's dream became a powerful symbol. He envisioned a mighty tree growing from his chest, its branches spreading to cover the entire world. This vision was interpreted as a divine sign, foretelling the Ottoman realm's destined greatness, inspiring successive rulers and subjects alike. Yet dreams alone cannot build an empire. Osman's rise depended on military might and shrewd politics. This dual strategy reshaped Anatolia's landscape. Osman I, also known as Ghazi Osman, inherited his father Tug or Ul's small frontier state and began expanding its borders. His wise decisions and resolute leadership laid the foundations for an empire that would endure for centuries. In 1299, Osman made a startling choice, declaring independence from the increasingly feeble Seljuk Sultanate. This act was not merely symbolic, but a calculated strategic risk. Osman thus filled the power vacuum left by the Seljuks' decline. Freed from constraints, he targeted vulnerable towns along the Byzantine frontier. His armies, driven by the spirit of jihad, captured fortresses, successively seizing Belek, Yenisei Hir, and Negouel. These significant victories demonstrated the Ottoman state's growing strength. These conquests provided additional territory and strategic footholds for future expansion. The Gotsi ethos became a potent engine of Ottoman development, blending religious fervor with martial skill to draw new warriors to the cause of spreading Islam into Christian lands. The promise of conquest and the sense of religious mission attracted fighters from all walks of life. The Ottoman army grew steadily, propelled by the Himar al of its soldiers. As the state's power increased, it required organizational structures. Osman designated the Yeni Koy as the first administrative center, making it the hub for managing the expanding territories. This move demonstrated Ottoman foresight, recognizing that conquest alone was insufficient for statehood. Sound governance was fundamental. The core strength of the early Ottoman army lay in its flexibility. The system established by Osman incorporated both Turkic nomads and Christian mercenaries, forging a diverse and formidable fighting force. This not only enhanced military prowess, but also laid the foundation for building a multicultural empire. An army composed of warriors from varied backgrounds could respond to diverse challenges. A pivotal campaign was the Siege of Bursa, commenced during Osman's reign and concluded shortly after his death. This siege demonstrated the Ottomans' advancing military prowess, proving their capacity to wage protracted warfare against formidable Byzantine strongholds. By 1326, when Osman's son Orhan Ghaziyas ended the throne, the Ottoman polity stood at a critical juncture. This fledgling kingdom was poised for transformation, and Orhan's rule would evolve it from a frontier domain into a mighty empire spanning two continents. This early expansion laid the foundations for centuries of Ottoman supremacy. Orhan's first major achievement was the completion of Bursa's conquest. The capture of this Byzantine stronghold was a landmark event. Bursa became the first official capital of the Ottomans, marking the transition from a nomadic tribe to a settled state. Orhan also minted the first Ottoman currency, the silver axe, a move that helped unify trade and taxation across the expanding domain. Recognizing the necessity of an organized government, this new leader established a centralized bureaucracy, laying the foundations for the complex Ottoman administrative system. This transformation proved crucial for governing the diverse ethnic groups under Ottoman rule and for consolidating resources during subsequent expansion. Orhan's military campaigns focused on Byzantine territories in northwestern Anatolia. By 1331, the Ottomans had captured Nikai and known as Iznik to the Turks, the ancient Byzantine capital symbolizing Christian resistance. Its fall dealt a severe blow to Byzantine influence in Anatolia. In 1337, the port city of Nicomedia, Izmit, also fell, consolidating Ottoman control over the region and opening access to the Sea of Marmara. The most significant event of Orhan's reign occurred in 1354, when the Ottomans first crossed the Bosporus Strait into Europe. Byzantine defences in the Gallipoli region collapsed following an earthquake, allowing the Ottoman army to seize this strategic stronghold. This European foothold proved crucial for future advances into the Balkans, opening new pathways for conquest. Orhan simultaneously reformed the military by establishing a nuke, or an elite infantry composed of Christian youths who had converted to Islam, recruited through the Devsami system. This conscription practice became a hallmark of Ottoman recruitment. Trained from childhood, these Janissaries swore allegiance solely to the Sultan, forming the core of the Ottoman army. When Murad I ascended the throne in 1362, the empire faced a new turning point. This youngest son of Orhan Ghazipur saw the future of Ottoman power lying in the Balkans rather than Anatolia. This strategic pivot transformed the state from a regional power into a transcontinental empire. Murad's first major triumph came in 1316 with the capture of Adrianople, modern Edirne. This strategic victory had profound consequences. Edirne, situated in south-eastern Europe, became the new Ottoman capital, signaling the empire's resolve to expand into Europe and establishing a base for subsequent Balkan campaigns. The capture of Adrianople, modern-day Edirne, in 1316 constituted a major triumph. This strategic victory had profound consequences. Edirne, situated in southeastern Europe, became the new Ottoman capital, demonstrating the empire's resolve to expand its European territories and establishing a base from which to launch subsequent Balkan campaigns. Yet Murad's ambitions demanded a formidable and loyal army, prompting him to institutionalize and expand the Devsami system. This practice involved recruiting Christian boys from conquered territories, converting them to Islam, and training them as janissaries or administrative officials. The Devsami system profoundly strengthened the empire's military and administrative structures. It not only provided a continuous supply of elite, loyal troops, but also forged a standing army capable of rivaling any European force. This system further facilitated the integration of conquered peoples into the Ottoman framework, with some members even attaining high positions. The Battle of Maritsa in 1371 tested Murad's military prowess. A coalition of Serbian nobles attempted to halt Ottoman expansion, culminating in a decisive Ottoman victory. This battle cemented the empire's authority in the region, paving the way for subsequent conquest. Following this victory, Murad adopted a shrewd strategy, transforming numerous Balkan states into vassals. Rather than pursuing costly full-scale conquest, he demanded tribute while permitting limited local autonomy. This approach expanded Ottoman influence while avoiding protracted warfare, establishing a system of vassal states that served both as buffers and sources of revenue. The pinnacle of Murad's reign was the Battle of Kosovo in 1389. Here, Ottoman forces clashed with a Balkan coalition led by Serbian Prince Lazar in a conflict that altered the course of Southeast European history, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Amidst the sudden reversal of fortunes, Murad was assassinated on the battlefield by a Serbian noble feigning surrender. Despite the Sultan's death, the Ottoman forces prevailed at Kosovo, routing the Serbian coalition and consolidating Ottoman control over the region. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Amidst the shifting fortunes of battle, Murad was assassinated by a feigned surrender of Serbian nobles. Despite the Sultan's demise, the Ottoman forces emerged victorious at Kosovo. The Serbian coalition disintegrated, and Ottoman control over the region was consolidated. This battle ended Serbian independence and ushered in centuries of Ottoman rule across the Balkans. Murad's reign profoundly reshaped the Ottoman polity. He transformed the Balkans into a crucial frontier, shifting the empire's focus westward. His military triumphs expanded territorial holdings, and governmental reforms strengthened central authority. He implemented a new governance structure, dividing conquered lands into military fiefdoms known as Team R, granted to Ottoman cavalrymen in exchange for military service. This system sustained a vast, self-sufficient army and facilitated the administration of new territories. By the time the first Bey Yazid ascended the throne in 1389, he inherited an empire poised for expansion, departing from his ancestors' strategy of gradual growth. Bey Yazid launched aggressive campaigns that propelled the empire to its zenith before bringing it to the brink of catastrophe. Bey Yazid's military prowess was fully demonstrated in his campaigns across the Balkans and Anatolia. Bulgaria became an Ottoman vassal state, while most of Serbia fell. Numerous small Turkic principalities in Anatolia were successively incorporated into the expanding empire. This formidable momentum established the Ottomans as a transcontinental power. In 1394, Bey Yazid had set his sights upon the ultimate objective, Constantinople. This former Byzantine capital had long stood as an obstacle to Ottoman ambitions. Bey Yazid had launched a siege to force its surrender, but the city's formidable walls and western aid enabled it to resist tenaciously. European aid enabled the city's defense, though the siege failed. This campaign signaled the Ottomans' growing threat to the Christian world. Their expansion alarmed Europe, prompting major powers to respond to the call for a holy war in 1396. They formed a coalition force, amassing troops to march into the Balkans and challenge Ottoman dominance. At the Battle of Nicopolis, the allied forces led by King Sismizdan of Hungary clashed with Bey Yazid's army. The battle concluded with an overwhelming Ottoman victory, shattering Western hopes of repelling the Ottomans. This triumph cemented Ottoman dominance in Southeast Europe and demonstrated their military prowess. During Bey Yazid's reign, internal reforms were also pursued to strengthen the state. Centralization was advanced to refine the imperial administrative system, enabling effective governance of rapidly expanding territories. The Janissary Corps grew significantly in both size and status under his rule, to signal imperial ambition. Bayezid boldly assumed the title Sultan of Rum, claiming Byzantine legitimacy and asserting Ottoman sovereignty over all former Byzantine territories. This move not only challenged the weakened Byzantine Empire, but also declared the Ottomans' expansionist goals. Yet Bayezid's relentless expansion and grandiose vision would ultimately lead to his downfall. As the Ottoman Empire reached its zenith, a new threat emerged from the east. Timur, also known as Timur Khan, the Turkic-Mongol conqueror of the vast Central Asian Empire, turned his gaze towards Anatolia. In 1402, the two great powers clashed fiercely at the Battle of Ankara. For the Ottomans, it proved a catastrophe. Bayezid's army, exhausted by years of warfare, was no match for Timur's seasoned forces. The Ottoman army was utterly routed, and Bayezid was taken captive. This stunning defeat shattered the myth of Ottoman invincibility, plunging the empire into chaos. Bayezid's imprisonment marked the beginning of a dark period in Ottoman history. The Sultan, who had once struck terror into the hearts of all across Eurasian Dacian, died in captivity the following year. His demise ushered in the Ottoman interregnum, a period of over a decade of civil war as Bayezid's sons vied for power, leaving the state on the brink of collapse and its future shrouded in uncertainty. The Ottoman interregnum, 1400 to 1413. The years 1402 to 1413 constituted a chaotic and pivotal period. Following Timur's defeat of the Ottomans at the Battle of Ankara, the empire descended into disorder. The capture of the first-generation Sultan, Bayezid, dismantled the central authority that had sustained Ottoman power. With Bayezid's death and captivity, the empire descended into protracted civil war. His four sons, Suleiman, Isam Musa, and Mehmed, each vied for the throne, fragmenting the empire into rival territories. The brothers divided Anatolia and the Balkans among themselves, forging intricate alliances and waging brutal warfare. Timur, seeking to weaken Ottoman control, revived semi-minor autonomous byliks in Anatolia, further exacerbating the fragmentation. These byliks, thirsting for independence, intensified political instability. The consequences of the civil war were profound. The Ottoman Empire's rapid expansion halted abruptly, and former Balkan vassal states seized the opportunity to regain their independence. The empire, once feared by its neighbors, now struggled to hold onto its own territories. As the civil war persisted, imperial resources dwindled, the conflict draining the Ottoman military and economic strength. Sustained warfare and turmoil brought unbearable suffering to the populace, with internal unrest spreading. Brotherly power struggles spread across the empire. Suleiman initially controlled the European provinces. Bayezid ruled western Anatolia, while the youngest, Mehmed, held sway over central and northern Anatolia. Musa first allied with Mehmed but later turned against him in the struggle for Balkan dominance. The conflict ebbed and flowed, though Suleiman started strongly. He was defeated by Musa in 1411. Musa's European rule proved fleeting. However, due to aid from the Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Iologos in 1413, Mehmed crossed into Europe and defeated Musa. The Ottoman Empire's decline was now starkly evident. This succession crisis demonstrated how dynastic strife could dismantle a mighty empire, underscoring the necessity of strong central leadership to maintain cohesion across vast and diverse territories. The interregnum also severely damaged the Ottoman military and political structures. Factions arbitrarily granted fiefs to secure allegiance, causing the collapse of the Timur system that maintained military discipline. This had profound consequences for the empire's military strength. From the ruins of this turmoil, a new leader emerged to reshape the Ottoman Empire. Mehmed I, the youngest son of Bayezid I, seized power in 1413 after a decade of civil war. His formidable task was to forge the fragmented nation back into a formidable power. The Ottoman interregnum had left deep scars, yet Mehmed's reign proved pivotal to the empire's revival and future trajectory. Mehmed's foremost task was to reclaim lost territories and rebuild Ottoman authority in Anatolia. He had to reintegrate the rebellious Waliks that had gained autonomy during the civil wars. These former vassal states now resisted central control. Mehmed pursued a dual strategy of diplomacy and force, negotiating with some leaders to exchange Ottoman government posts for allegiance, while launching targeted military campaigns against recalcitrant states to gradually reclaim Anatolia's heartland. The Balkans presented another complex challenge during the interregnum. Numerous former vassal states had shaken off Ottoman influence. Mehmed endeavored to establish Ottoman suzerainty in pivotal regions like Serbia and Wallachia. His strategy was masterfully nuanced, recognizing that full-scale conquest risked provoking united resistance. He maintained Ottoman influence through diplomatic pressure, strategic alliances, and limited military engagements. Mehmed's frontier consolidation efforts were not merely about reclaiming lost territories. They were also aimed at forging alliances with neighboring states to fortify the foundations of the restored empire. This diplomatic approach not only established buffer zones but also reduced threats, allowing him to focus on internal reconstruction. Though weakened, the Byzantine Empire remained a thorny issue. Constantinople stood as a symbol of Byzantine might. Mehmed chose cautious restraint. He avoided committing substantial resources to besieging the city, a move that would have drained the recovering empire, instead adopting a strategy of pressure coupled with diplomacy towards Byzantium. This approach contained a threat from Constantinople, while allowing Mehmed to concentrate on rebuilding his empire. Domestically, Mehmed faced the daunting task of repairing the governmental structures shattered by civil war. He endeavored to restore the time system, the cornerstone of the Ottoman military and administrative framework. This entailed granting land to loyal supporters and ensuring cavalry units were maintained and properly equipped. Economic recovery was another priority during the civil wars. The empire's trade networks with neighboring states had been disrupted. Mehmed took action to rebuild these vital economic arteries. He promoted trade by improving roads, protecting caravans, and concluding trade agreements with neighboring powers. These efforts gradually revitalized the Ottoman economy, replenishing the treasury and building reserves for future development. By the end of Mehmed's reign, the Ottoman Empire was entering a new era. In 1421, Murad I ascended to the throne as sultan, inheriting an empire emerging from civil strife. The young ruler faced urgent challenges, threatening the hard-won stability his father had maintained. Internal rebellions simmered beneath the surface, while external threats loomed from both the Byzantine Empire and the Anatolian Waliks. Murad's first test arrived swiftly. He had to confront a large-scale rebellion backed by the Byzantines. This uprising sought to exploit the perceived weakness of the new sultan, aiming to overthrow the order painstakingly rebuilt by Mehmed I. Yet Murad proved himself a capable ruler, swiftly quelling the revolt. His decisive action consolidated the throne and reaffirmed Ottoman control over crucial Anatolian territories. With internal threats neutralized, Murad turned his gaze outward, particularly towards the Balkans. This region had long been a focal point of Ottoman expansion, and now Murad aimed to consolidate and extend his influence more thoroughly. His military campaigns targeted Serbia, Wallachia, and Albania, seeking to transform these loose vassal states into core Ottoman territories. Simultaneously, Murad began pushing Ottoman power northwards into Hungary, thus laying the groundwork for future conflicts in Eastern Europe. The pinnacle of Murad's military achievements was the Battle of Varna in 1444. Here, the Ottoman forces confronted a formidable Christian coalition led by Polish and Hungarian troops. Bolstered by recent victories and determined to expel the Ottomans from Europe, the Crusaders marched confidently into battle. Yet Murad's tactics and military discipline determined the outcome. The Ottoman victory at Varna shattered the Christian alliance and secured Ottoman dominance in the Balkans for years to come. Despite this triumph, Murad's reign faced persistent challenges. The primary threat stemmed from the rebellion led by the Albanian leader Esk Anderbeg, the Esk Anderbeg uprising, which began in 1443. Persistently troubled Ottoman rule in the region. The Albanian leaders' guerrilla tactics and intimate knowledge of the mountainous terrain repeatedly frustrated Ottoman forces. The Esk Anderbeg uprising, erupting in 1443, remained a persistent thorn in Ottoman rule throughout the region. This Albanian leader repeatedly thwarted Ottoman attempts at control through guerrilla tactics and exploitation of mountainous terrain, demonstrating that Ottoman power had its limits even at the height of its Balkan dominance. An unexpected move illustrating both the Ottoman political complexity and Murad's character occurred in 1440, for the Sultan briefly relinquished the throne to his son Mehmed II. This act may have stemmed from a desire to step back from affairs of state, yet the interregnum proved fleeting, the disorder arising from a young, inexperienced ruler during times of war soon became apparent. Murad, recognizing the crisis, promptly restored his authority upon reclaiming the empire he had built. In his later years, he focused on consolidating foundations and strategic positioning, recognizing that securing the borders was pivotal for future expansion. Consequently, he undertook extensive fortifications of Ottoman strongholds across the Balkans and Anatolia. These fortresses served both as defensive structures and as launching points for future campaigns, demonstrating the forward-thinking strategic vision of Murad's reign. By the close of Murad II's reign, the Ottoman Empire stood poised to enter a new epoch. In 1451, an ambitious young sultan ascended the throne, his sights fixed upon the Holy Grail elusive to his ancestors for centuries. The 19-year-old Mehmed I arrived with a singular objective: the conquest of Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine Empire. Mehmed's preparations were meticulous and comprehensive. To secure the strategic choke points leading to the city, he ordered the construction of a colossal fortress on the European shore of the Bosporus Strait. This formidable stronghold, named Dreamy, was completed in a mere 4 months. Its cannons dominated the sea lanes, cutting off Constantinople's access to reinforcements from the Black Sea. Yet Mehmed's most formidable weapon remained to be deployed. He had commissioned Hungarian engineer Albani to forge a series of colossal cannons. These behemoths, stretching over 8 meters in length, could hurl stone projectiles weighing up to 600 kilograms, unleashing an unprecedented level of siege firepower. In April 1453, Mehmed launched his assault upon Constantinople. This fortress, having withstood a millennium of sieges, now faced its ultimate test. For 50-3 days, Ottoman artillery pounded the ancient walls relentlessly. Within the city walls, Emperor Constantine X led his vastly outnumbered garrison in a tenacious defense. The climax of the siege erupted at dawn on 29 May 1453, when Ottoman forces breached the walls and poured into the city. In the ensuing fierce street fighting, the last Byzantine emperor was slain. By nightfall, the Ottomans had accomplished what many deemed impossible. Constantinople, the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire for a millennium, had fallen. Mehmed swiftly transformed this hard mine as one prize, embarking on the restoration and revitalization of a city long in decline. The young sultan envisioned it as a new imperial capital rivaling the world's great cities, encouraging settlers from across his realm to relocate there. He brought in craftsmen, scholars, and merchants to breathe new life into the metropolis. In a move laden with political and religious symbolism, Mehmed converted Hagia Sophia, the Eastern Christian sanctuary, into a mosque. Yet he simultaneously took steps to protect the city's Christian and Jewish communities. Recognizing their skills and networks, as vital to future prosperity. This relatively tolerant religious policy became a hallmark of Ottoman rule for centuries. With the fall of Constantinople, Mehmed converted this Eastern Christian sanctuary into a mosque, yet he simultaneously took steps to protect the city's Christian and Jewish communities, recognizing their skills and networks as vital to future prosperity. This relatively tolerant religious policy became a hallmark of Ottoman rule for centuries. Following the fall of Constantinople, Mehmed converted this Eastern Christians sanctuary into a mosque. He simultaneously implemented protective measures to ensure the survival of the city's Christian and Jewish communities, fully aware that their skills and networks were vital to future prosperity. This relatively tolerant religious policy became a hallmark of Ottoman rule for centuries. Having consolidated Constantinople, Mehmed set about expanding and strengthening Ottoman power. He led his forces deep into the Balkans, conquering Serbia in 1459 and ending its independence. The following year, he captured Mysteros in southern Greece, and in 1461, the Ottoman Empire along the Black Sea coast surrendered to the Ottoman army. These campaigns not only eradicated the remnants of Byzantine influence, but also established Ottoman dominance over the region. The Empire of Rab is on the Black Sea coast, surrendered to the Ottoman forces. These conquests stripped away the last vestiges of Byzantine rule, cementing Ottoman control over the area. Mehmed's ambitions extended beyond the new capital's periphery. He launched campaigns against Bosnia and Albania, encountering fierce resistance from local leaders such as Iskandar Beg. In Anatolia, he incorporated the last Turkic beyliks into Ottoman rule, forging a more unified Turkic state. His armies even crossed the Black Sea to seize the Crimean Peninsula, extending Ottoman influence into the Eastern European steppes. The Sultan's military triumphs complemented the strengthening of imperial institutions. He reformed the Ottoman legal system, enacting a new code that became the foundation of governance for centuries. He vigorously promoted the arts and sciences, drawing scholars and artists from across the Islamic world to the court of Istanbul. Imagine an empire at its zenith poised for further expansion. Then imagine a new sovereign choosing a radically different path. When Bayezid I ascended the throne in 1481, he inherited not only vast territories but also a critical challenge. Could the Ottoman Empire sustain its prosperity without warfare? As son of Mehmed II, Bayezid had shouldered the weighty responsibility of transforming the war machine into a stable, pluralistic civilization. His reign would pivot from conquest to consolidation, testing the empire's diplomatic prowess and internal development capabilities in novel ways. Bayezid's rise was far from smooth. His early reign marred by fierce conflict with his brother, Sem Sultan. The repercussions of this struggle extended far beyond Ottoman borders. The defeated Sem sought refuge in Europe, initiating a complex diplomatic game involving the Pope and European monarchs. For years, Sem's presence within the Christian world served as a bargaining chip in Ottoman diplomacy, compelling Bayezid to navigate between threats and negotiations. Once the immediate threat to his rule was contained, Bayezid turned his attention inward. He dedicated himself to consolidating central authority and implementing empire-wide economic growth policies. With infrastructure becoming a core priority, the Sultan invested in constructing roads, bridges, and public buildings. These measures not only improved subject livelihoods, but also facilitated trade and communication across Bayezid's vast domains. Perhaps his most far-reaching initiative stemmed from events far from his borders. In 1492, as the Spanish Inquisition reached its zenith, thousands of Sephardic Jews were expelled, while the world regarded them as religious outcasts. Bayezid discerned an opportunity. He opened the Ottoman borders to these refugees. Cities like Istanbul and Salonik welcomed an influx of artisans, merchants, and scholars. infusing the empire's cultural and economic life with vitality that would endure for generations. This act of tolerance was not merely an act of benevolence, but a shrewd political and economic strategy. Jewish refugees introduced new crafts, trade networks, and intellectual resources to the Ottoman Empire. This starkly contrasted with widespread religious persecution across much of contemporary Europe, reinforcing the Ottoman Empire's image as a relative haven of religious freedom and cultural synthesis. Whilst the Byzantine era was oft uncharacterized by diplomatic and domestic development, the Ottoman military remained far from idle. Sustained, measured military operations secured control over parts of the Peloponnese and expand Ottoman influence in the Black Sea region. Whilst the navy had not yet attained the prominence it would under later sultans, it was already being strengthened. These measures enabled the Ottoman Empire to maintain control over crucial maritime trade routes and defend its interests in the Mediterranean. Bayezid's diplomatic strategy blended cautious diplomacy with strategic military pressure. He maintained complex relations with European powers such as Venice and the Habsburg Empire, frequently employing Ottoman military deterrence as a bargaining chip in negotiations rather than solely for conquest. This nuanced approach enabled the empire to secure its interests while avoiding the perpetual warfare of earlier rulers. The Sultan's emphasis on religious tolerance extended beyond accepting Jewish refugees. He understood that stability in such a vast and diverse empire required flexibility in accommodating faiths and customs, and thus actively promoted cultural pluralism. This policy not only maintained domestic stability, but also cemented the empire's reputation as a hub for international trade and culture. However, during Bayezid's later reign, new challenges arose. The rising Safavid dynasty increasingly threatened Ottoman interests in the east. Simultaneously, internal divisions emerged within the empire, with some factions demanding a return to the Sultan's former policy of aggressive expansion. These pressures ultimately forced Bayezid to abdicate in 1512, succeeded by his son Selim, nicknamed the Grim. Selim seized power through political maneuvering and ruthless ambition. His brief yet transformative reign not only rewrote Ottoman history, but reshaped the Middle Eastern power structure. Selim's foremost task was consolidating his throne with cold precision. He eliminated potential rivals, including his own brothers and numerous high officials. This brutal seizure of power earned him the epithet the Grim, and established an absolute, unassailable rule. Unlike his father Bayezid, who prioritized diplomacy and domestic stability, Selim turned his gaze eastward. The rise of the Persians, a Safavid empire, deeply troubled the Ottomans. The Safavids, adherents of Shia Islam, posed both a military threat and an ideological challenge to the Sunni Ottoman state. Selim responded with swift and resolute action, launching a campaign against the Safavids, culminating in the decisive Battle of Seeholder and in 1514. This pivotal engagement demonstrated the tactical and technological superiority of the Ottoman forces. Their firearms and artillery utterly routed the Safavid cavalry, securing a decisive victory. The Battle of Seeholder not only consolidated Ottoman rule in Anatolia, but also inaugurated centuries of fated confrontation between the two great empires. With the eastern front secured, Selim turned his gaze southwards. The Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, then ruling over vast territories including Syria and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina, became his next objective. In a campaign lasting less than 2 years, Selim's forces decisively defeated the Mamluks at the Battle of Marj Dab, in 1516, and the Battle of Ridania in 1517. The annexation of Mamluk territories profoundly transformed the Ottoman Empire. The incorporation of Egypt, Syria, and the Hejaz significantly expanded its borders and resources. Egypt, with its fertile Nile Valley and vital trade routes, infused the empire with wealth and economic strength. More crucially, the religious and political significance of this conquest was profound. Having secured control over the Islamic holy cities of Mecca and Medina, Selim could now claim the title of Caliph of Islam. This transformation elevated the Ottoman Sultan from a powerful Muslim ruler to the universally recognized religious and political leader of the entire Muslim world. Selim's campaigns profoundly reshaped Ottoman society and culture. The empire now spanned from the Balkans to Egypt, encompassing diverse ethnicities and cultures. This newfound pluralism presented governance challenges, yet enriched Ottoman culture through the free circulation of ideas, art and scholarship across vast territories. Selim's reign also witnessed a significant expansion of Ottoman naval power. Recognizing the strategic necessity of maritime control, he actively expanded and modernized the Ottoman fleet. Selim's reign witnessed a remarkable surge in Ottoman naval prowess. Recognizing the strategic importance of maritime dominance, he vigorously expanded and modernized the Ottoman fleet, laying the foundations for the empire's subsequent supremacy in the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean, a dominance that would reach its zenith under his successors. When Selim I passed away, suddenly in 1520, he left behind a transformed empire within a mere 8 years. He had nearly doubled Ottoman territories, fortified the empire's eastern borders, and elevated the Ottoman Sultan to the Caliphate. This laid the groundwork for the Ottoman Golden Age under his son and successor, the great Suleiman. When Selim I was laid to rest in 1520, few could foresee the seismic shifts in world politics that lay ahead. His successor, Suleiman I, would not only expand the empire's borders, but fundamentally redefine the nature of Ottoman power. This monarch, hailed in the West as Suleiman the Magnificent and revered in the Muslim world as the Lawgiver, ushered in the Ottoman Golden Age. Suleiman swiftly demonstrated Ottoman supremacy by capturing the long-defended strategic stronghold of Belgrade in 1521. This victory paved the way for Ottoman maritime dominance across the Black Sea, Mediterranean, and Indian Ocean, reaching its zenith under his successors. The Lawgiver ushered in the Ottoman Golden Age. Suleiman swiftly demonstrated imperial dominance in 1521. He captured the strategic stronghold of Belgrade, which had long resisted Ottoman advances, paving the way for expansion into Central Europe. Just 5 years later, at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, Ottoman forces routed the Hungarian army, ending Hungarian independence and establishing control over the region. The young sultan's ambitions knew no bounds. By 1529, he had advanced directly upon Vienna, the very heart of the Habsburg domain. This first siege of Vienna marked the furthest extent of Ottoman penetration into Europe. Though the city itself was not captured, the siege profoundly shocked European potentates and cemented the Ottoman Empire's hegemonic status. In 1529, he turned his attention towards the very heart of the Habsburg domain, Vienna. The first siege of Vienna represented the furthest extent of Ottoman expansion into Europe. Though the city itself was not captured, the siege itself sent shockwaves through the European principality, cementing the Ottoman Empire's reputation as a formidable military power. Suleiman's conquests extended beyond land. Under the command of the outstanding naval commander Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, the Ottoman navy dominated the Mediterranean. This maritime supremacy enabled Ottoman expansion along the North African coast into the Middle East. By the mid-16th century, Ottoman territory stretched unprecedentedly from Hungary to Yemen, and from Algeria to Mesopotamia. Yet Suleiman's legacy extended beyond military triumphs. His reign witnessed comprehensive reforms of the Ottoman legal system, earning him the epithet the Lawgiver. Reforms touched every facet of society, from criminal law to land administration, shaping the Ottoman polity for centuries. The Sultan's court became a center of cultural and artistic achievement. Under Suleiman's patronage, Ottoman architecture reached its zenith. The renowned architect Dreamy designed the empire's most iconic structures, including Istanbul's magnificent Suleiman Ii Mosque. This architectural masterpiece, distinguished by its soaring dome and slender minarets, epitomized the artistic zenith of Suleiman's reign. Literature and the arts flourished equally, with poetry, calligraphy, and miniature painting reaching unprecedented heights. Suleiman himself was a gifted poet, penning works under the pseudonym Uhibbi. His verses, imbued with love and spirituality, revealed the refined culture of the Ottoman court. Suleiman's private life proved as captivating as his public achievements. His marriage to Harem Sultan, also known as Roxel, broke with Ottoman tradition. This woman, who rose from slavery to become his lawful wife, wielded profound influence within the imperial court. The relationship challenged established norms and reshaped Ottoman royal politics. As his reign progressed, the empire faced new challenges. Tensions with the Safavid Persian Empire spurred eastern campaigns. In Europe, Ottoman advances were stalled by mounting Christian resistance. Despite these trials, the empire maintained its regional dominance. In 1566, 71-year-old Suleiman launched his final campaign. The siege of Sagat in Hungary aimed to reopen the route to Vienna, but fate intervened. On 6 September 1566, as Ottoman forces besieged the fortress, Suleiman passed away in his tent. To prevent demoralization, news of his death was concealed for weeks, underscoring the vital importance of his leadership. As Suleiman passed on land, another theater of war came into sharp focus. The Mediterranean, once Rome's inland sea, had become an arena for imperial rivalry. Born on the Anatolian steppes, the Ottoman Empire had transformed into a maritime power challenging Europe's naval supremacy. The 16th century witnessed the Ottomans' vigorous expansion of their naval influence. Under the command of the legendary Admiral Barbarossa Hayred in Pescia, Ottoman fleets patrolled waters stretching from the Aegean Sea to the North African coast. Barbarossa's tactical genius and daring raids struck terror into Christian sailors, securing crucial victories for the empire. These achievements enabled Ottoman control over vital trade routes and coastal territories stretching from Algeria to the Levant. As Ottoman naval power grew, tensions with other Mediterranean powers intensified. The Venetian Republic, long dominant in the Adriatic, saw its trade interests threatened. Spain, under the ambitious Habsburgs, viewed Ottoman expansion as a direct challenge, and the Knights of St. John, based in Malta, felt immense pressure from the Ottoman fleet. The clash of civilizations, long played out on land, now spilled across the seas. Leveraging superior speed and numbers, Ottoman warships repeatedly attacked Christian merchant vessels and plundered coastal settlements. Europe's powers thus sought to unite against this common threat to the Christian world. Ultimately, Pope Pius V brokered an alliance capable of countering Ottoman naval supremacy. The Holy League, formed in 1571, which united the naval forces of Spain, Venice, and the Papal States. This coalition became the last hope to halt Ottoman expansion in the Mediterranean. The stage was set for the largest and most significant naval battle in history. On 7 October 1571, off the coast of Lepanto in Greece, two colossal fleets faced each other in a battle destined to be etched in history. The Holy League fleet, commanded by John of Austria, comprised over 200 warships, their decks steaming with soldiers and bristling with cannons. Opposing them was the Ottoman fleet, led by Ali Pasha, of comparable strength. As the sun rose over the Ionian Sea, the two fleets clashed fiercely amidst cannon fire, thick smoke, and splintering timber. The battle raged for hours, neither side yielding. Christiane, a cuirassier fired upon Ottoman archers, while galley slaves strained at the oars, driving their ships into deadly close quarters. The turning point came during the fierce struggle between One's flagship and Dali Pasha's vessel. In the soft minus depicted and celebrated moment, the Ottoman admiral fell, his ship captured. Without their leader, the Ottoman fleet began to collapse. By dusk, the sea was strewn with wreckage and countless sailors' corpses. The Ottoman fleet was virtually annihilated, with only a handful of vessels escaping. The Holy League achieved a decisive victory, shattering the myth of Ottoman naval invincibility. Yet following Lepanto, the Ottoman Empire demonstrated remarkable resilience, rebuilding a new fleet within a single year, showcasing its formidable resources and organizational prowess. While Christian nations celebrated their triumph, the Ottomans were already plotting their next move. As the empire weathered storms abroad, a profound shift in power was brewing within its borders. For over a century, the empire would be led by an unexpected group of rulers, women wielding influence from within the harem. This era, known as the Sultanate of Women, or the Qad Enla or Sultan LG, became a singular chapter in Ottoman history, where imperial women, particularly the sultan's mother and favored consorts, manipulated affairs from the depths of the harem. For over a century, the empire would be guided by an unexpected ruling class, the powerful women within the harem. This era, termed the Sultanate of Women, or the Qad Enla or Sultan LG, represents a singular chapter in Ottoman history, during which imperial women, particularly the mothers and favored consorts of sultans, exerted immense political influence. The origins of this period can be traced back to the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent and the rise of Hurrem Sultan, also known as Roxolana. Breaking with harem tradition, Hurrem became Suleiman's lawful wife and trusted advisor, setting a precedent for female involvement in state affairs. Her influence extended beyond the palace walls, encompassing diplomatic engagements and the spearheading of charitable endeavors, including the construction of mosques, schools, and hospitals across the empire. As the 16th century progressed, the power of the Valide Sultan, the mother of the reigning sultan, became increasingly institutionalized. Figures such as Benu Sultan and Safiya Sultan exerted profound influence over imperial policy and court politics during the reigns of their son. They controlled the sultan's audience rights, their authority often superseding that of high-ranking male officials, and played pivotal roles in major imperial decisions. This shift in power was particularly pronounced during the reigns of young or incompetent sultans, when the Valide Sultan frequently served as de facto regent, guiding the empire through turbulent times. Their influence extended across foreign policy, domestic governance, and even military affairs, challenging traditional gender roles within the Muslim world. The zenith of the era of female sultans was marked by the rise of Qasem Sultan, one of the most powerful figures in Ottoman history, serving successively as regent for two sons and then for decades for her young grandson Abdulaziz. She wielded immense authority over imperial affairs. Her political acumen and strategic maneuvering enabled her to navigate the intricate court politics across multiple sultanates, maintaining her influence uninterrupted. Yet as female power grew, the Ottoman Empire descended into escalating political turmoil. The harem, once a breeding ground for female influence, gradually disintegrated as the empire's power structures underwent restructuring. Her young grandson served as regent. For decades, Qasem wielded immense power over imperial affairs. Her political acumen and strategic maneuvering enabled her to navigate the complexities of court politics, maintaining her position of authority through several sultanate reigns. Yet the rise of female influence within the empire coincided precisely with the intensifying turbulence of Ottoman politics. The harem transformed from a place of seclusion into a hub of political intrigue and factional strife. Fierce conflicts, intricate conspiracies, and even assassination attempts frequently erupted among court factions vying for power. This internal strife gradually eroded the central authority of the empire, exacerbating its long-standing governance challenges. Despite the political turbulence of the female sultans era, it also yielded rich cultural and social fruits for the Ottoman Empire. Numerous powerful women patronized the arts and architecture, orchestrating grand construction projects and funding cultural institutions. Their philanthropic endeavors include establishing charitable foundations providing vital services to the empire's diverse populations. As the reverberations of Qasim's sultan's demise subsided, Ottoman history turned a new page, an era marked by a peculiar interplay of ascent and decline. The empire stood at the crossroads of triumph and peril, its vast territory spanning 3 continents, linked by vital trade routes connecting Europe, Asia, and Africa. Bustling metropolises like Istanbul, Cairo, and Baghdad thrived with commercial activity. Markets overflowed with exotic treasures, fragrant spices, vibrant silks, rich coffee, and exquisite textiles transported from distant lands. This flourishing trade steadily filled the imperial treasury, with the dividends of economic growth benefiting all strata of Ottoman society. Yet beneath this facade, cracks were silently forming in the empire's foundation. Silver from the New World flooded European markets, disrupting the Ottoman economy. The subsequent plunge in silver prices caused severe devaluation of the empire's currency. Inflation eroded both the purchasing power of the populace and the resources of the treasury. In the countryside, a different picture emerged to meet the increasing demands of the cities and the world market. Agricultural production continued to rise, yet the heavy burden of taxation weighed heavily upon the peasants. Corrupt local officials, preoccupied with amassing wealth rather than fulfilling their duties, compounded the hardships of rural communities. Simmering resentment finally erupted as peasants rose in revolt against an oppressive system threatening their livelihood. The once praised Janissary, along the backbone of Ottoman military might, now cast a shadow over the empire's political arena. This elite guard, recruited from Christian boys through conscription and trained as elite troops, had become a powerful yet volatile force within Ottoman society. Their increasing involvement in palace intrigues and factional strife further destabilized the already fragile balance of power. As central control over the provinces weakened, local warlords known as ANS rose to fill the power vacuum. These influential figures, often hailing from prominent families or military backgrounds, established their own spheres of influence, challenging the sultan's authority and fracturing the once unified imperial rule. The Salalai uprisings in Anatolia starkly revealed the empire's internal fragility. These revolts, fueled by economic hardship, political discontent and social unrest, exposed the limits of Ottoman rule in its heartland. The central government's struggle to suppress these rebellions underscored the widening divide between the empire's heartland and its peripheries. Beyond its borders, the Ottoman Empire remained locked in conflict with formidable adversaries. The Safavid Empire in Persia posed a constant threat, compelling the Ottomans to maintain a vigilant military presence along their eastern frontier, while in the west, European powers, driven by technological advances and increasingly formidable naval strength, continually challenged Ottoman control over the Mediterranean and beyond. These persistent conflicts drained the empire's vast military and economic resources. The necessity of maintaining a large standing army and funding costly campaigns placed an unbearable burden on the treasury, diverting funds from urgently needed domestic development. Technological advances and the burgeoning naval power of Western European powers challenged Ottoman supremacy in the Mediterranean and beyond. These persistent conflicts exacted a heavy toll on the empire's military and economic resources. The pressure to sustain a large standing army and fund costly campaigns strained the treasury to breaking point. diverting funds from urgently needed domestic development and reform. The empire found itself trapped in a vicious cycle. External pressures exacerbated internal fragility, while internal turmoil hindered effective responses to external threats. In 1683, a clash of civilizations with repercussions echoing through the centuries erupted. At the gates of Vienna, a confrontation between two worlds that would not only determine the empire's fate but reshape the map of Europe. The ambitious and resolute Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha had an Ottoman army exceeding 150 Zorro men towards Vienna, the jewel of the Habsburg Empire. This was no mere raid or show of force, but a strategic campaign aimed at seizing the crucial stronghold of Vienna. A single battle would determine the empire's fate and reshape the map of Europe. Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha, driven by lofty ambitions, led an Ottoman army exceeding 150 Zorro men to besiege Vienna, the jewel of the Habsburg Empire. This was no ordinary raid or show of force, but a deliberate strategic move to strike at the heart of Christian Europe and embed Ottoman influence deep within the continent. Both sides understood this battle was a matter of survival. By early July 1683, the Ottoman forces had encircled Vienna, their overwhelming numbers dwarfing the city's defenders. The siege commenced in earnest. Ottoman artillery pounded the walls while sappers labored to breach the defenses within the city walls. Ernst Strudiger von Sturmberg commanded his vastly outnumbered forces, fully aware that the fate of Central Europe hung in the balance. For 2 grueling months, Vienna withstood the Ottoman onslaught. The citizens endured hunger, disease, and the constant threat of the walls collapsing, yet they held their ground fully, where they stood as the final barrier against Ottoman forces advancing into the heart of Europe. As late summer gave way to autumn, the garrison's plight grew ever more desperate, yet the Ottomans remained unaware. Unbeknownst to them, a storm was brewing on the horizon. King John I Sobieski of Poland, responding to the call of Emperor Leopold I of the Habsburgs, marched upon Vienna at the head of a combined Polish, Austrian and German army. On 12 September 1683, the reinforcements reached the Kollenberg hill overlooking Vienna. What met their eyes was desolation and despair. The Ottoman encampment stretched across the land like a city, while Vienna's walls, though battered, remained standing. What followed was one of the most magnificent cavalry charges in history. King Sobieski led his renowned winged hussars in a thunderous assault upon the Ottoman defences. The Allied surprise attack threw the enemy into chaos. Kara Mustafa Pasha, who had seen victory within his grasp, watched his army disintegrate. By nightfall, the Ottoman forces had retreated in full. The Battle of Vienna ended in a crushing defeat for the once unstoppable empire. It is said that when King Sobieski stormed the Ottoman left wing encampment, he paraphrased Caesar's famous words: "We came, we saw, we conquered, we came, we saw, God conquered." The reverberations of the failed siege echoed across Europe and the Ottoman Empire. For Europeans, this battle marked the turning point in the decline of Ottoman power. The victory galvanized Christian Europe, leading to the formation of the Holy League in 1680 for a coalition sworn to expel Ottoman forces from Central Europe permanently. The brief period known in Turkish as the Tuli Paraleled Evri under Sultan Ahmed III became a crucial phase of cultural blossoming and modernization attempts between 1718 and 1730. Named for the Ottoman elite's obsession with tulips, the flower became a symbol of elegance and luxury. The 1718 Treaty of Passau, which brought a rare period of peace to the empire, allowing Ottoman rulers to turn their attention inward. With external pressures temporarily eased, Sultan Ahmed II and Grand Vizier embarked upon domestic reforms and cultural initiatives to revitalize the empire's foundations. Istanbul subsequently witnessed an architectural renaissance, revitalized by the construction of new palaces, libraries and ornate fountains. The Omadai I fountain before Topkapi Palace stands as an emblematic structure of this era, its intricate ornamentation and calligraphy showcasing the artistic mastery of the time. The Tulipara also witnessed the Ottoman elite embracing European art, architecture, and fashion elements. This cultural exchange flourished through deepened diplomatic ties with Western powers, particularly France. Ottoman envoys traveled to European capitals, bringing back new ideas and influences that reshaped the empire's artistic and intellectual landscape. A major breakthrough came with the commissioning of the first Ottoman printing press in 1727. This revolutionary undertaking was spearheaded by Ibrahim Mutfarikar, a Hungarian-born Ottoman scholar. The introduction of printed books marked a turning point in the dissemination of knowledge and ideas. Whilst religious texts continued to circulate in manuscript form, printing enabled the mass production of secular works, encompassing scientific treatises and historical documents. The Tulipare witnessed a flourishing of cultural activity, with poetry, music, and public festivities becoming central to Ottoman high society. Tulip gardens became fashionable among the elite, with rare bulbs commanding exorbitant prices. These gardens frequently served as venues for lavish banquets, where poetry was recited, music performed, and the latest fashions displayed. Economic reforms aimed to strengthen the empire's trade networks and enhance domestic productivity. The government actively encouraged the development of luxury goods, such as textiles and ceramics, to counter European import. These lavish banquets interwove poetry recitals, musical performances, and fashion displays. Economic reforms sought to fortify the empire's trade networks and boost its productivity, with the government fostering industries producing luxury goods like textiles and ceramics to rival European import. While these measures brought fleeting prosperity to urban elites, the extravagance and Westernization trends born of the Tulipare gradually fueled discontent among conservatives and commoners. While the elite reveled in tulip gardens and lavish feasts, ordinary citizens faced economic hardship and mounting taxes. The ruling class witnessed corruption and foreign ideas, eroding the foundations of traditional Ottoman society. Mounting tensions finally erupted in 1730 with the Patron-e Halal revolt, led by former Janissary soldier Patron-e Halal. This uprising united disgruntled officers, religious conservative, and commoners weary of Tulipara extravagance. The rebels stormed the palace, demanding the deposition of Sultan Ahmed I ironed an end to his reformist and opulent policies. The 18th century witnessed the rise of terrorist Russia as a formidable adversary, challenging Ottoman hegemony in Eastern Europe and the Black Sea region. This shift in the balance of power precipitated the Russo-Turkish wars, compelling the Ottoman Empire to confront its military weaknesses and initiate reform. The first major confrontation between the two empires occurred in 1735, when Russian forces secured victory in the Battle of the Black Sea. Thereafter, the Ottomans were compelled to acknowledge their military inferiority, culminating in the 1740 Free Treaty of I-G, which recognized Russian control over the Black Sea coastline, control over Eastern Europe and the Black Sea region. This shift in the balance of power triggered a series of conflicts known as the Russo-Turkish Wars, compelling the Ottoman Empire to confront its military weaknesses and initiate reform. The first major confrontation between the two empires occurred during the Russo-Turkish War of 1735-1739, which tested Ottoman military strength against the rising Russian power. Although the Ottomans recaptured Belgrade through the 1739 Treaty of Belgrade, they were compelled to cede territories in the northern Black Sea region. This loss of territory established a pattern that would define Russo-Turkish relations for decades. As Russian ambition swelled, Its Black Sea naval presence expanded relentlessly, with advances towards Crimea, under Ottoman control becoming the focal point of tension between the two empires. The Black Sea region held immense strategic value. Control over these waters meant influence over trade routes and dominance of warm-water ports. Precisely Russia's long-standing expansionist goal, the Russo-Turkish War of 1768-1770 proved a pivotal turning point, culminating in the humiliating Treaty of Kano-Rj in 1774. This treaty not only dealt a severe blow to Ottoman power and prestige, but also granted Russia access to the Black Sea, secured rights to protect Orthodox Christians within Ottoman territories, and conferred significant influence over the Crimean Khanate. The latter provision proved particularly pivotal, laying the groundwork for Russia's future ambitions. The signing of the Treaty of Kukku severely diminished Ottoman strengthened prestige. Russia not only secured a Black Sea outlet, but also gained the right to protect Orthodox Christians within Ottoman territories and exerted substantial influence over the Crimean Khanate. This final point proved particularly pivotal, laying the groundwork for Russia's subsequent annexation of Crimea in 1783, a defeat that plunged the Ottoman Empire into profound turmoil. These military setbacks starkly exposed the flaws within the Ottoman military system. The forces that had struck fear into European powers for centuries now found themselves defeated by Russia's modern tactics and technology. The need for reform was painfully apparent. Sultan Süleyman, a pivotal figure in early reforms, recognized the urgency of change and established the New Order army as a -seeded. This formulated European military structures, adopting modern training methods and equipment. Simultaneously, Süleyman had pursued official reforms to fund modernization, with a clear objective to elevate Ottoman military capabilities to European standards and halt the empire's decline. Yet these reforms encountered formidable internal resistance to the Janissaries. Once the empire's elite had transformed into a conservative force resisting any change, many Janissaries perceived the new army as a threat to their privileged status, opposing all attempts at modernization. This internal resistance fueled political instability, ultimately undermining the effectiveness of early reforms. The Janissaries, once the empire's elite force, had become a conservative force resisting change. Many Janissaries perceived the new army as a threat to their privileged status and opposed any attempts at modernization. This internal resistance fostered political instability, ultimately undermining the effectiveness of early reforms. The successive defeats in the Russo-Turkish War had repercussions far beyond military setbacks. They exposed the fragility of the Ottoman Empire to the world, emboldening other powers to challenge its authority. These conflicts cemented Russia's position as the Ottoman Empire's principal rival in Eastern Europe, a dynamic that shaped regional politics for generations. As the Ottoman Empire entered the 19th century, it faced a stark reality: adapt or perish. The Tanzimat era, a meaning reorganization would usher in an unparalleled period of transformation. But could centuries-old traditions truly be reshaped by a single edict from the Sultan? The seeds of reform had been sown during the reign of Mahmud II, who viewed modernization as an urgent necessity. Yet genuine change began under his son, Abdülmecid I. The groundbreaking 1839 Uahan edict promised legal equality to all Ottoman subjects, regardless of religion or ethnicity. These principles were further cemented by the 1856 Reform Edict. Centralization and strengthening the state apparatus formed the core objectives of the Tanzimat reform. The empire endured humiliating military defeats and faced escalating internal rebellions. The 1856 Reform Edict further cemented these principles. The core objective of the Tanzimat reforms lay in strengthening centralized authority. having endured humiliating military defeats and intensifying internal rebellions. While European powers expanded their influence over Ottoman territories, the reformers became convinced that adopting Western institutions was vital for survival. The legal system underwent radical transformation, with newly enacted civil and criminal codes largely modeled on European precedents. Secular courts operated alongside traditional Islamic courts, establishing a dual minus-track system balancing modernity and tradition. This legal reform aimed to establish a fair and more efficient governmental system to serve the empire's diverse population. Education became a central objective for the reformers, who recognized that a modern state depended on an educated populace. Consequently, they established secular schools, universities, and military academies. These institutions were designed to cultivate a new class of bureaucrats and military officers proficient in Western methods, guiding the empire into a new era. Simultaneously, educational expansion exposed more Ottomans to European thought and culture, accelerating the pace of change. Infrastructure development constituted another pivotal aspect of the Tanzimat reforms. A railway network began reversing the empire, linking distant provinces with the capital, thereby facilitating trade and military mobilization. The laying of telegraph lines significantly improved communications across the vast Ottoman territory. The construction of modern ports integrated the empire more closely into the global trade network. Economic reforms aimed to modernize the Ottoman fiscal system and encourage foreign investment. Yet these changes proved mixed in effect. While fostering increased trade and economic activity, they also deepened the empire's dependence on European loans. This financial entanglement would later exacerbate economic instability and heighten vulnerability to foreign influence. Despite the Tanzimat reforms' ambitious scope, they faced formidable challenges. Conservative elements within Ottoman society resisted what they perceived as a departure from traditional Islamic values. The reforms also struggled to counter the rising tide of Balkan nationalism, where subjects increasingly sought independence rather than equal status within the empire. The empire's vast territory and diversity further undermined reform effectiveness, hindering its ability to counter the expanding Balkan nationalist movements, where subjects increasingly sought independence rather than equal status within the empire. The empire's vast territory and diversity further undermined reform effectiveness, hindering its ability to counter the expanding Balkan nationalist movements, where subjects increasingly sought independence rather than equal status within the empire. The empire's vast territory and diversity also undermined reform efforts, making it difficult to address the expanding challenges. Conservative segments across Ottoman society resisted changes they perceived as deviating from traditional Islamic values. Reforms also struggled to counter the rising tide of Balkan nationalist movements, where subject peoples increasingly sought independence rather than equal status within the empire. The empire's vast expanse and ethnic diversity further undermined reform efforts, rendering comprehensive change across such a sprawling and varied territory a monumental task. Many reforms were unevenly implemented, proving profoundly effective in urban centers, yet yielding scant results in rural areas. The Tanzimat era concluded in 1876 with the accession of Abdul Hamid II, who initially supported reforms and oversaw the promulgation of the empire's first constitution. As the Ottoman Empire entered the 19th century, the rise of nationalism presented a novel and formidable challenge. This ideology, rooted in European Enlightenment thought, swiftly permeated the empire's diverse ethnic groups. For centuries, the Ottoman regime had maintained a delicate equilibrium among its ethnic and religious communities. Yet this balance was now unraveling. The Balkans emerged as the epicenter of nationalist awakening, where aspirations for autonomy and cultural identity inspired diverse ethnic groups to envision futures beyond Ottoman rule. The Greek War of Independence, erupting in 1821, proved a pivotal turning point. The 9-year standoff between Greek revolutionaries and Ottoman forces captured the imagination of pro-Greek sympathizers across Europe. Greece's eventual victory in 1830 sent shockwaves through the empire. It demonstrated that independence was not an unattainable dream, and other peoples began to awaken. Serbia likewise embarked on the path to autonomy. Through a series of uprisings and negotiations, the Principality of Serbia gradually loosened the shackles of Ottoman rule. Concurrently, Bulgaria experienced a cultural renaissance. The Bulgarian national revival forged a distinct linguistic identity and historical consciousness, laying the groundwork for political autonomy and ultimately catalyzing the April Uprising of 1876. Though brutally suppressed, this revolt drew international attention to Bulgarian aspirations. The Ottoman Empire's harsh response to these movements further alienated its subject peoples. This laid the groundwork for political demands, ultimately catalyzing the April Uprising of 1876. Though brutally suppressed, the uprising drew international attention to Bulgaria's cause. The Ottoman Empire's response to such movements was oft unexceptionally severe, further estranging the peoples of its dominions. The Bulgarian uprising and other instances of fierce resistance and suppression provided ammunition for critics both within and outside the empire. European powers, ever eager to expand their influence, exploited these crises none more so than Russia, which styled itself the protector of Slavs and Orthodox Christians in the Balkans and intervened militarily on multiple occasions. The empire's Arab provinces, though experiencing slower nationalist development, were not immune to the winds of change. Local elites began more vigorously defending their rights, challenging tradition and Ottoman authority. While the seeds of Arab nationalism had been sown, they did not truly take root until the early 1900s. Intellectual circles gradually nurtured an Arab identity distinct from Turkish rule. As nationalist movements gained strength, the Ottoman Empire increasingly found itself on the defensive. Each uprising, whether successful or not, eroded imperial legitimacy and drained resources. The empire's inability to govern its diverse peoples became glaringly apparent. Reform promises from the Tanzimat era, such as legal equality for all subjects, were often too late or poorly implemented. The cycle of rebellion, repression, and external intervention exacted a heavy toll, with the empire losing more territory every decade. The 1878 Berlin Congress redrew the Balkan map, drastically reducing Ottoman holdings in Europe. Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro gained full independence, while Bulgaria became an autonomous principality. The Ottoman Empire, spanning 3 continents, visibly shrank before the world's eyes. This territorial partition brought severe economic consequences. The loss of fertile regions and trade routes undermined the empire's official foundations. Military and bureaucratic modernization, driven by internal unrest and external threats, further strained the treasury. The empire entered a vicious cycle. Turmoil led to economic weakness, while economic stagnation fueled further unrest. The dawn of the 20th century brought transformative upheaval to the Ottoman Empire. In 1908, the reformist Young Turks launched a revolution under the banner of the Committee of Union and Progress, reshaping the empire's future. The core objective lay in modernizing and strengthening the Ottoman state apparatus, a system that had decayed for decades under the autocratic rule of Abdul Hamid II. The Young Turk Revolution compelled Abdul Hamid II to reinstate the Ottoman constitution, frozen for over 30 years, marking a brief return to parliamentary government that briefly kindled hopes for substantive reform. Driven by centralizing ambitions to curb European interference and propel the empire into modernity, This revolution nevertheless exacerbated latent internal divisions. A failed counter-minus coup attempt in 1909 led to Abdul Hamid II's deposition. His successor, Mehmed V, saw ill power shift to the Committee of Union and Progress. Enver Pasha, Telit Pasha, and Cemal Pasha emerged as the empire's de facto rulers, steering Ottoman policy through the turbulent years that followed. The new regime faced immediate challenges. The Italo-Turkish War of 1911-12 concluded with Libya's cession to Italy, severely damaging Ottoman prestige, followed by the Balkan Wars of 1912-1913, which nearly stripped the empire of its remaining European territories. These defeats underscored the urgent need for reform and modernization to reverse this decline and reclaim lost ground. The Ottoman Empire embarked upon a fatal venture in 1914, the First World War. By the Balkan Wars of 1913, the empire had nearly lost all its remaining European territories. These setbacks underscored the urgent need for deepening reforms and modernization to reverse its decline and reclaim lost ground. The Ottoman Empire made a fatal decision in 1914 to enter the First World War as a member of the Central Powers. This move would prove disastrous. The empire suffered successive major defeats, including the catastrophic defeat at the hands of Russian forces during the Battle of Sarikamish in the winter of 1914-1915, waged in the harsh Caucasus Mountains. This campaign saw tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers perish from freezing temperatures and starvation. Amidst the ongoing conflict, the empire faced internal turmoil. The Arab Revolt of 1916, supported by British officer T.E. Lawrence, further eroded Ottoman control over its Middle Eastern territories. Fueled by promises of Arab independence, this uprising severely undermined Ottoman authority in the region. Thus commenced the darkest chapter in Ottoman history. The government-initiated operations of 1915 culminated in the Armenian genocide, resulting in the mass expulsion and death of over 1 million Armenians. This event left an indelible stain on Ottoman history, its repercussions still resonating in international relations today. The Ottoman Empire's final chapter concluded amidst the conflagration of the First World War, a conflict that sealed the empire's fate. When global hostility ceased, the once mighty empire found itself among the vanquished, facing harsh reckoning. The Treaty of Sevres, signed in 1920, dismantled Ottoman sovereignty. This agreement partitioned the empire's remaining territories, placing vast regions under Allied control, while leaving only a small portion of Anatolia under Ottoman rule. For many Turks, the Treaty of Sevres represented not merely defeat, but a profound humiliation. This treaty ignited a fierce nationalist backlash, uniting forces against the dismemberment of their homeland. Amidst this tide of resentment and resolve emerged a figure destined to reshape Turkey's destiny: Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. This distinguished officer became the driving force behind the Turkish War of Independence. Between 1919 and 1923, Turkish nationalists waged a resolute struggle against the occupying forces. A pivotal battle in the war was the Battle of Sakarya in 1921. During this 3-week-long fierce engagement, Atatürk's forces successfully repelled the Greek offensive, greatly boosting Turkish morale and turning the tide of the war. The following year, Turkish forces secured another pivotal victory at Dumlupnar, crushing Greek resistance in Anatolia and paving the way for the recapture of Istanbul, effectively ending Greek presence in the region. These military triumphs cemented Atatürk's authority and demonstrated the viability of an independent Turkish nation. As hostilities continued, the foundations of Ottoman rule began to crumble. In November 1922, the Turkish Grand National Assembly, established by Atatürk and his supporters, took the momentous step of abolishing the Ottoman Sultanate. This act brought to an end over 6 centuries of Ottoman imperial rule. The last sultan, Mehmed VI, fled Istanbul into exile, symbolizing the empire's complete dissolution. The triumph of Turkish nationalists prompted negotiations with the new allied powers, culminating in the signing of the Treaty of Los, and in 1923. This treaty superseded the earlier Treaty of Sabbath, recognizing the sovereignty of the new Turkish state, delineating modern Turkey's borders, securing its control over Anatolia and Eastern Thrace, while relinquishing the Ottoman Empire's historical territorial claims in the Middle East and North Africa. On 29 October 1923, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk formally proclaimed the establishment of the Republic of Turkey. This declaration marked the official birth of the modern Turkish state. Turkey's control over Anatolia and Eastern Thrace was confirmed, whilst historical Ottoman territorial claims in the Middle East and North Africa were relinquished. On 29 October 1923, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk formally proclaimed the establishment of the Republic of Turkey. This declaration marked the official birth of the modern Turkish state and signified a complete break with the history of the Ottoman Empire. The choice of Ankara rather than Istanbul as the new republic's capital symbolized a fresh beginning and the transfer of imperial legacy. The following year brought further upheaval. In March 1924. Ataturk and the Grand National Assembly abolished the Caliphate, the last vestige of Ottoman religious authority. This action demonstrated Ataturk's resolve to establish a secular state, completely severing the shackles of the intertwined religious and political power inherent in the Ottoman system. With the foundations of the new republic laid, Ataturk launched a comprehensive reform program dedicated to modernizing Turkish society. These transformations touched every facet of life: education, law, dress, and language. The Latin alphabet replaced Arabic script, Western minor-style clothing was promoted, and a new civil code modeled on European systems was introduced. Women gained unprecedented rights, including the right to vote and stand for election. These reforms, collectively termed Kemal, is named after their architect, sought to transform Turkey into a modern, secular nation-state, aligned with Western values. The legacy of the Ottoman Empire continues to shape the modern Middle Eastern Balkans, reminding us of the transience of power and the enduring impact of history. Should you enjoy this historical journey, we invite you to subscribe for more tales from the past.